Well, welcome everyone this evening. We're really excited for our webinar, and as we get started, um, as always, we want to start off with first off a welcome. Thanks for taking time to join us, and like to start off with Agribest Feeds with our mission. We're here to enhance lives, and we do that through uniquely better products and superior customer service. And we'll be talking quite a bit on the livestock, although we'll touch on horse side of things with our extracts this evening. But what we really want to do is come alongside and connect with the ranchers and what your goals are as far as health and production on your animals, maximizing forage, getting true feed efficiency, and bottom line producer profits. And one of our big challenges when we start to look at that is stresses from insects, flies, and impacts that has, stresses from heat stress, gut stress, those types of things. And we're really excited this evening to be able to welcome Tom McCullough with FMF Specialty Agri Products with us this evening. Tom, I guess we go way back, and I don't know, it's been 5-6 years that we've been working together and have been really excited to see what the value that we've had with utilizing the garlic and also these stress blends. So I guess I'd like to turn that over to you this evening, give you if you could give us a little bit of a background and then just roll into your presentation, and we'll have questions and answers here at the end. So you can either raise your hand or type your question in the chat there, and we'll get to them. So go ahead, Tom.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Yeah, we've had a good time working together the last few years, and enjoyed spending time working with Sweet Pro, Redmond Agri Beef, Best Feeds, and all the beef and livestock customers out here. So my background is I grew up in northern Missouri here, rural agriculture, row crop and beef beef cattle, commercial cow background. And anyway, went to school, University of Missouri, and have been around the feed business, working with feed additives for around 20 years now, I guess. So anyway, traveled a lot of different parts of the country, seen a lot of neat places, and met a lot of good people. So appreciate you guys having us in for a webinar here. And if anybody has questions, feel free to stop me and ask, and we can kind of go from there. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I spent about 10 plus years working for a Swiss company, which was acquired by ADM in 2019. We brought a lot of new market concepts to the U.S. here in terms of working with plant-based compounds that were intended initially for replacing subtherapeutic levels of antibiotics in the feed, and especially ones that were used in the poultry industry a lot, swine for that have crossover with human medicine. So bacitracins and gentamicins and drugs like that were fed at low levels for growth and feed efficiency response. So that's kind of how that started in cattle. We started working with a combination of some different things, which I'll pull up here if I can share my screen, Scott. Can you see this yet? Scott?
I muted myself. Sorry.
Okay. Can everybody see my screen now?
I don't see it yet there.
Yeah. Let's see.
We were doing so good until things went south.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a dry run on this once, and it worked pretty well. We should have known something was up at that point. Let's see. Zoom. Okay, let's see now. All right, I'll share my screen here. Found the right button. I think we've got it now.
There
Okay,
you go.
guys, can everybody see that? Okay,
Yep.
good deal. I'm going to go up here and minimize that part and maximize that part. Okay, good deal. So we started with the cattle side, working with some different plant extracts. We screened over, 60 some different plant-based compounds, looking for ideal ones that could have an impact on the rumen. Uh, all of these compounds are made here in the U.S. now. We utilize a plant here in the Midwest to do chill spray drying for us. That gives us some stability with compounds that are otherwise can be fairly volatile and lose potency over time, especially in with feed processing, storage, and hot humid conditions, and things that might degrade the active ingredients in our products. Um, the way these work, we get it kind of a uniform particle size. The main thing is we're using some compounds like capsicum from chili peppers and other things that can be kind of irritating also, and be a little irritating to the mill workers especially. So they reduce the dust and feed production. They protect the active ingredients. We it gives us high stability in the feed for longer periods of time, and puts them in a form that we can handle. Um, our quality control standards, these products are all coming out of a food grade facility. So first off, we standardize everything. We get our incoming plant extracts in, these bioactive compounds, and we test them in the lab. Make sure they meet the potency they're supposed to be. And then they go into production. Uh, every batch of product has a certificate of analysis, and so we're meeting and exceeding safe feed, safe food standards, which are kind of the standard for feed manufacturing today in the U.S. Every batch of our product comes with a certificate of analysis. It has the particle size, assays on the active ingredients to make sure that we're meeting within a standard of what's supposed to be in there. And then also, because of the food grade association we've got with the plant, they do a lot of testing for E. coli, salmonella, mold, yeast, and different contaminants in the product, or potential contaminants, to make sure we meet the spec on that. For beef cattle, there's a lot of information in the published literature on a combination of capsicum from chili peppers, eugenol, and cinnamaldehyde being an option for ionophore replacement. BioImpact Ruminants, our branded product, and we sell it both into the market for beef and dairy cattle to improve feed efficiency and optimize rumen function. The way that works is, I'd like to move this out of the way a little bit if I could. Okay, there we go. The way that works is the compounds in the product. The capsicum from chili pepper extract affects feed intake behavior. You get better, more consistent feed intake patterns. It kind of creates a snacking effect for bunk fed cattle. They eat less at the first meal at the bunk, and then more frequent, smaller meals till the feed's gone. Typically, if we're feeding to a clean bunk. These other compounds, cinnamaldehyde is from cinnamon bark. It's an extract from that. It reduces the Prevotellus and the Archaea bacteria that can produce methanes, and also reduces ammonia production in the rumen. So we get better, more consistent. Uh, total VFA production with lower acetate and more propionic acid. Propionate is a volatile fatty acid that the rumen bugs produce for energy for the animal to convert to growth, maintenance, growth, lactation, gestation, whatever form stage of production that they're going through, and also helps us stretch our forage. And this acetate to propionate shift, lowering acetate and increasing propionic acid, gives us a feed efficiency response. So that was the original idea with a lot of these compounds, is what can we do to optimize rumen function? And so the combination of cinnamaldehyde and eugenol affects the rumen through direct effect on the microbes, and then the capsicum portion of that creates this improved feed intake pattern. What we've seen is less rumen damage, less subclinical acidosis, and things like that. I already mentioned this, but the literature would suggest that when you feed these combinations of plant extracts, you can reduce methane. This never used to be something that I really touched on a whole lot, but with the emphasis on methane and the pressure we're being put under with as an industry with livestock and specifically beef and dairy production, this has come to the forefront. To me, in the past, this was always just a byproduct of better feed efficiency, reducing this methane pathway, because methane gas has energy and it leaves the animal. Carbons are gone into the atmosphere and we lose that energy. But if we can convert that into more propionic acid and increase efficiency that way, that's what we're talking about with some of these compounds here. Typically, what we've seen from the data is a increased ability for the animal to convert protein to more large peptides and small peptides and amino acids with less free ruminal ammonia. So energy, not only an energy efficiency, but a protein efficiency also is what we're shooting for here. There have been a couple studies published that have shown increased water intake, up to 26% increased water. And this is important for a few different areas of livestock production with cattle. Stress calves, if we can get them drinking when we wean them and put them in a different pen. If we can, if we're shipping these cattle to a feed yard and want to get them on feed, the first step is getting them drinking water. So heat stress is one that we're coming into this time of year where we want these cattle drinking in the summertime. If we're getting a groundwater source, and you can increase water, 15, 20, 25% intake on water, you can have a profound effect on lowering body temperatures, ruminal temperature and internal body temperature. So you don't think a degree and a half of sounds like a lot, but in the summer when these animals are under severe, moderate to severe heat stress, it can actually have an impact on between life and death for a lot of these big black cattle that we're putting on feed, and feed them up to probably we're going to see outweights at the feed yards again of 1,450, 1,500 pounds, just because our national cow herd's down so much. We're going to have to produce that beef and put more pounds on them in the feed yard. So hopefully we don't have a bad summer this year and experience, but where we have humidity, this has been a problem in mid Kansas and Nebraska, on east Iowa, where we get really severe high temperatures in the summer and it doesn't cool down at night. But these humidity levels are really high in this part of the country, where we can. This isn't a cure-all silver bullet, but it certainly can help as a tool for cattlemen to use to keep cattle cool. and on pasture cattle, it can make a difference to whether the cattle are bunched up in the timber somewhere or out grazing and well distributed on on the range and pasture. So anyway, well, one of the things that a lot of the people have like to talk about is capsicum as a vasodilator. It's being used. Chili pepper extracts have been used in research quite a bit now for increasing blood flow and vessel dilation for blood pressure mitigation in humans. And we see the same thing in cattle. There's a specific receptor. It's the receptor is called TRPV1. It's a receptor that senses heat or spiciness, and the capsicum from the chili peppers trips that receptor, and through a cascade of biochemical events, it creates endogenous nitric oxide production, which dilates the vessels. Probably most importantly, under times of heat stress and other kinds of stress, something we weren't thinking about a number of years ago, but where this most profound effect happens is actually in the gut. And we know a lot more about gut health, even in cattle now. Ruminant nutrition animal health professionals are focused on the next phase of the next phase of our focus with research and development to increase animal health is looking at the gut now. So if we're increasing blood flow, nutrient delivery to the gut, one thing that can happen down there during stress is what a lot of people are familiar now as leaky gut effect. And this is also when big cattle die under heat stress. They get septic. These epithelial lining of the gut wall opens up. Large proteins, pathogens, etc., can be directly absorbed right into the bloodstream, and then there's an immune response that happens to that creates inflammation and eventually sepsis, and those cattle can die if it goes far enough. So anyway, blood flow, like I said before, we increase water consumption, fractionate feed intake. One of the things that's overlooked with capsicum is it creates an incredible amount of salivation and buffering capacity with recycling, bicarb and so forth. So reduce gut inflammation and reduce intestinal permeability. Young animals that can stimulate endogenous enzyme secretion, so their gut's going to have better, higher functionality to it as far as digesting proteins and things, which positively impacts digestion and improves nutrient digestibility and availability there too. We have a recommendation of a gram per head per day for larger cattle and 600 to 800 milligrams for calves. We played around with this and have seen some nice improvements where specific challenges on ranches have been ongoing problems for a number of years. And you can talk to your regional sales people about some of the effects and impacts we've had with this product in the feeds, but it's we've had a very positive and good relationship with some of the Agribest customers who have really been challenged with weaning challenges and different things like that, different types of scour issues and so forth. So anyway, I will keep clicking here. Does anybody have any questions? Scott, can you see?
If you got any questions, go ahead and raise your hand. The product we've just been talking about, when you're from Agribest standpoint, we call it our stress blend product. So that's the cinnamon cloves and chili peppers that are coming. And in a lot of ways, Sweet Pro and Redmond together, but particularly Sweet Pro is really good on the good gut health and working on that. But this just comes alongside and just helps take that to a whole different level. Any questions that we have on that before we jump into the garlic side? Raise your hand or type your question in the Q&A box. Oh, Cody Kramer, let me see if I can get you to. Are you able to unmute, Cody? Let's see. I wonder if I can. I think I made you the host, Tom, and now I don't know if I am able to.
I can stop the share here and maybe let it go back to you. How'd that work?
Yeah, I think you're the, so if you click on up on the top on panelist, or let's see, if you go to the bottom on panelist or participants and click on there,
Who do you want me to click on?
you can click on either me and make me co-host again, or if you want to click on Cody there that's got his hand up, he can and ask him. There's a button there that says ask to unmute, I think.
Okay, I see it now. Yeah. Vince, Cody. Well,
Oh, hey, I can reclaim host. Look at that.
yeah, there you go. I gave it back to you.
Stole it right back. Okay. Now if I gotta get rid of that. Okay, go back over to Cody.
Oh, I see.
Allow to. All right, Cody. There we go. Go ahead and unmute your
Okay,
phone.
I got you, Cody.
Can you
Yes,
hear me
Cody.
now?
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Nice work.
I see your question. I see your question, Cody. And yes, Redmond has an option for the bioimpact ruminant for a stress blend to go in with the garlic as well. Yes, they do.
Perfect. That's perfect.
All right. Cody's from over in Kansas. Ethan, go ahead and unmute and ask your question. You able to unmute there, Ethan? Let's see here. I guess you can type your question in the chat box there. All right, go over, let's see, I guess. Okay. Let's go ahead and roll. Ethan, we'll come back to your question here when we go ahead and go through the garlic side, and if you can remember your question or type it in, we'll come back to it. So are you able to share your screen again?
Yeah, we'll keep rolling here. Let me share my screen back again. Oh, you may have to help me out with that, Scott.
Okay, try that.
Gave up my privileges.
There you go. I think I gave it back to you.
There we go. Got it now. Okay. Here we go, guys. Yes, the biggest product we've had by far over the last few years has grown into this bioimpact garlic implemented into the Redmond salt as well as the Sweet Pro tubs. So we have two ways of getting this out there. Also, I'm sure some of you guys may be familiar with it by now. Garlic has if you start getting online, it just you get into all kinds of stuff. Prevents cancer, all this, pretty much whatever. It'll cure whatever ails you. But for our purposes here, we're primarily using it as a remediation for insect control. flies that take blood meals on cattle, horn flies primarily cattle on pasture, and lice and ticks. Seems like anything that takes a blood meal is averse to the garlic if you have it in there at a high enough dose. And we're running probably higher doses by far with the Redmond and Sweet Pro products than most companies in the U.S. are using. A lot of companies are using garlic powder, and this product is somewhere in the ballpark of about 10 to 12 x the organosulfur compounds that are found in garlic powder. So it's a very concentrated source. There's kind of a fine balance there between what the feed mill employees can tolerate in terms of the garlic odor and exposure to efficacious dose, but we've kind of found that sweet spot. And anyway, but the garlic's got a lot of antioxidant properties, so it's also good in stress situations where there's oxidative stress occurring. It's got some pretty profound antimicrobial actions. We're not as focused on that part of it, but there is some impact. We've got some crossover between eugenol and garlic, both being able to affect that acetate propionate shift that we talked about earlier. So the combination of those things is kind of what gives us that ionophore-like effect. It can increase vasodilation and through more of a blood thinning approach, which it can be beneficial for heat stress as well. Improving ruminal efficiency, like I mentioned, and I should probably take that out of there. We haven't really seen any difference in some of the studies on palatability. We know there's no negative effect, and I wouldn't say it enhances palatability, so I should probably remove that. But we all kind of are familiar with why we want to combat insects that take blood meals. In our part of the country here, disease vectors, anaplasmosis is a big one. We fed a lot of CTC in this part of the country over the years just for prevention of that. It's a little bit of more of a issue to have it in feed today because of the veterinary feed directive, but a lot of people still feed it. And this is not a silver bullet cure all either for everything that ails you. In terms of, this is part of our garlic strategy is part of a multi-pronged approach to trying to limit and decrease the assault of these horn flies and ticks and things that are putting pressure on our cattle. So we recommend you still ear tag cattle. You have rubbers out, or put spray cattle once in a while, or do some things in conjunction with feeding garlic that can work together and provide several modes of action of keeping the insect pressure off the livestock. But anyway, our whole point is to decrease animal stress, which helps increase production and reduces economic loss. Our product is a natural insect repellent. Again, we're standardizing prior to and after mixing to check and try to stabilize these compounds. We use a concentrated garlic oil, which is where all the good stuff is, along with granulated garlic salt to carry the product into the feed. Garlic is a minimal risk, been recognized as a minimal risk pesticide by the EPA. However, they don't require any record keeping and feed mill management of these minimal risk pesticides that they deem more safe. And again, we we're producing this product in a food grade facility with comprehensive quality control. Here's a study. There's been some research ongoing up in Canada looking at feeding garlic, and this is about a tenth of our dose. But even at this these lower doses, what they have seen recorded year after year up there is about a 55% reduction in fly counts, and fly avoidance behaviors have been reduced significantly. In this study, University of Saskatchewan was done with the Canadian Ag Ministry, and they had a garlic control group in this case with 150 cow-calf pairs, along with the second group with 115 pairs, and a third group of untreated groups, both here on the right, with just fed trace mineralized salt. And what they saw again was about a 55% reduction in fly numbers on these cattle. Here they ran this study back another year with 116 pairs, 183 pairs fed salt only versus garlic, and saw significant reduction in flies here. Now, one thing that's been said is these fly numbers are pretty low in terms of what we see around the country a lot. But I think what we've seen around the country also with a much higher dose is probably a very similar type response to through exposure to customers and out looking at cattle. And the big thing to me is we don't eliminate all the flies on the cattle, but if you'll pay attention specifically to defensive fly avoidance behaviors that cattle exhibit, throwing heads, tails going 100 miles an hour, foot stomping, and that kind of thing. What we do typically see and what we think is that after a week or two, we're getting elevation in these organosulfur, elevation in the blood of these organosulfur compounds, and the flies don't seem to like it. And we think what is happening is they're not taking 35 blood meals a day, as data indicates that horn flies do. They may only be taking a fraction of that many, so they're not biting the cattle as much, keeping the cattle agitated, and that is pretty clear when you're out observing what's going on with cow-calf herds. There's more data. There's been several studies out now in the market of garlic significantly reducing tick counts and gross tick weights that are pulled off cattle. So ticks aren't attaching as much when garlic's fed, and they're not engorging and taking the blood out of the cattle that they do typically when we compare to control. This was a study done published in the Medical and Veterinary Entomology Journal, and the p-value on the difference of the tick count and tick gross weights was reduced by 64%. So again, it's a part of a management strategy to reduce the pressure, not a wholesale control mechanism. Something new that we've started working on based on feedback from customers that had been sending a lot of fecal samples in for deworming, and I've got some data on this. Garlic reduces fecal egg count in sheep. This was a study where both garlic and Ivomec were used, and we have a negative control on the green bar on the left over here. no treatments were issued to this study group. And these sheep received Ivomec, and these sheep were fed garlic. And when they measured this after a period of, I think, 60 days in this trial, we saw statistically significant reductions in both the groups versus the control. Numerically, we weren't as good as the garlic, but there was no statistical difference between age 63 and 1805. 3 times the level, but no statistical difference here. So there is some biological activity going on with internal parasites here. Another study, or same study, when they looked at pack cell volume in these sheep, the Ivomec and the garlic treatments both had much higher level. This is an indirect indicator of immune status, immune function, but more healthy red blood cells carrying oxygen in these two groups versus the control. And then another study was done in goats where we have a particular problem with parasite resistance to the common deworming products that have been around the market for many years. We've had fenbendazole and ivermectin, sidectins, and a lot of them that have lost some efficacy over time. And this particular study, looking at fecal egg counts in goats, eggs per gram of feces in the control here, which was untreated. The T1 group at garlic, these goats were oral gavage twice a day for 60 days. And when we back calculate the dose that was used, it's very similar to what we're putting in the feed here. So we've got a easy delivery mechanism to get these compounds into these animals. But at 25 mils, they reduce the fecal egg counts by about a third, eggs per gram of feces. And then with the 50 mil dose, which is kind of close to what we're doing, it really reduced it down to almost nothing, by a tenth. So this translated into increased live weight and average daily gain across the board here. So this difference was statistically significant, and the difference between the control and the high dose group was highly significant. So that I'll skip back a few slides here to go back to my original slide. We're working with a veterinary parasitology lab now who's measuring this for us. And what I'd like to do is start getting some samples. If we have customers that have been feeding the garlic, we have some people that are feeding it year round now. So some of the salespeople know who the customers are. If we can identify a few people that have some interest in looking at this, we'll cover the cost on the sending the fecals in for analysis. And I'll work with the Agribest Feeds guys on how to do this, but it's pretty simple. It's Mid-America Ag Research, Dr. Don Bliss's lab up in Wisconsin. You go on his webpage and click on this red Test Now button. This is on the homepage. It will bring up a list of by species, some PDFs here, and you can click on this, open it. We're going to put my information in here on this sheet. This is the sheet that will go in with the samples. You take what I use is these poop bags for dogs that people that live in the city pick up behind their dogs, and you get about a golf ball size fresh ball of manure, and put it in there. And I usually put we'll try to sample about 10% of a herd, but if it's a large herd of cattle, 1,000 head or 400 or 500 head. We'll just take 20 samples from different pastures and around, and not make a composite. We don't want to put them together. We want to keep them all individually bagged, but I'll put those in with one sheet, and then I'll have a sample numbers so they know how many are in there. And if you can put my information on the top right, I'll save one of these and send it to you, Scott, by species, and maybe you can distribute it to your people so they don't have to fill this out every time and try to dig out my contact information. But FMF as a sponsor and me as a contact with my email, phone, and all that, then we'll take care of the cost of doing this for some customers. What I'd like to do is look at people that have been feeding the product for 60 days right now this time of year, and take a sample. We also would like to recover information in terms of when the cattle were dewormed last. If it was that fall working when you weaned calves and vaccinated everything. If you use Cydectin, what the product was and the date, and then we can kind of establish a baseline of what's going on here for customers that are just beginning to put the tubs and the Redmond salt back out for the fly season. We'd like to see cattle on product for about 60 days, and then take some fecals. We can take them before now and then check them again in 60, 70 days, and see if we can draw any correlative associative effects to what we've got going on here. So if anybody has any questions about that, I'm going to put my contact information up here at the end, and that's my phone number and email. If you need help with obtaining fecals, maybe we ought to do a separate little training call, Scott, to try to identify some customers and make a list of people that are interested in taking a look at this. This just could be a little extra value that you may be obtaining from feeding the garlic product. But we certainly had a lot of feedback from customers who've been sending fecal samples in over the last 3, 4, 5 years, who have been telling us they're coming back with such low counts that they're not even recommending deworming. So anyway, we'd like to start building a little data set on that, know a little bit more about what's going on with the product. And if there is some value to that, it may just be that we can, take some pressure off the cattle, get some performance gains, and also allow. I'm not really sure how many new products are in the R&D pipeline for some of these companies like Merck and others, but we've had a lot of these same drugs we've been using for a long time, and it may help us continue to stretch and expand the life expectancy of some of those products that have been working for a long time. So anyway, yeah. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to try to field those for you. And thank you for your time.
You bet. Thanks, Tom. Any questions? Go ahead. I don't know, Ethan, if you want to unmute it. He's from over in North Dakota there. You had your question, or if you got that answered. Just open up. Thanks for Tom taking the time, and while we have him on the line, it'd be great to just be able to visit here openly. Any questions on anything we've talked about on the garlic side or the stress blend side?
Yeah, Scott, I just wanted to comment. I actually did take some samples in, and of course, Tom and I have talked about it, but I wanted to share it. If I remember right, there's about 400 samples taken in the day that I took, and I only I was late out of the gate and I only got 2 herds, about 20 samples in. But anyway, actually Don Bliss is the one that run these samples. And of those approximately 400 samples they'd ran that day, the 20 that I took in were the lowest internal parasite count of any of them. Don said these are low enough, they do not need to be wormed. And he asked me when was the last time they wormed, and both these sets of cattle had been on Redmond with garlic for 2 years nonstop. And so I texted both of them, found out they hadn't been wormed for 2 years. So that was a pretty impressive effect that the garlic had on them, that 2 sets of cattle. And there's 2 sets of cattle that were probably 80, 90 miles apart from each other. It wasn't like they were on the same range. So, and there was cattle that neighbored these cattle were also tested that day. And like I said, it was a pretty phenomenal result, I thought, for just being on garlic.
Thanks, Dwayne. I appreciate you sharing that. I've had some conversations with Dr. Bliss. He definitely thinks there's some biological activity going on here if you can get the products in the dose ranges that work. Excuse me. And I think we're right in the ballpark there. So, for reasonable cost per head per day to get this in the feed and keep some fly and insect pressure down, as well as potentially having some other benefits. I think we need to start measuring the cause and effect relationship going on here. So thank you.
Oh yeah, definitely check with your dealer or one of our regional sales managers if you've got a herd that you would like to participate with some of these fecal sampling. Ethan, can you unmute there? Try again. Not sure. Or if you want to type your question in the Q&A there, we can get to it that way. Or down on the bottom left is a little microphone looking like thing. If you click on that, that should unmute you. Any other questions while we're waiting here? So
I'd like to
Tom,
get to Ethan. Yep.
oh,
Go ahead.
Written in there? Yeah, I don't see it written in there yet. So yeah, if you can unmute or write your question and we'll grab that. So on the fecal sampling, you had mentioned cattle, also sheep.
Yep. I had a neighbor actually last week that has about 175 hair sheep, and I went and sampled. He hadn't really blanket dewormed anything for about eight years, so I'm going to be really interested to see kind of how these come back. But we sent them off, and he spot deworm stuff that's been unthrifty or whatever, but he hadn't gone across the board for quite a while. But he's been feeding the Redmond salt all winter, so we'll get an indication of what we've got going on there pretty shortly. And I'll share this with you guys whenever I get. I took quite a few samples around just home here last week that I sent off, so it'll be interesting to see what comes back. These are all cattle that have been on tubs and garlic and sheep for the whole winter and really for the last year or two. So they should have a good blood status, and we should be able to get a good indication of what's going on.
Excellent.
Yeah, and Tom, we sure appreciate your work on this and working with Redmond and Sweet Pro. the levels that Redmond and Sweet Pro have put in of this product, and also the concentrated value of your products are very effective. We have some people, oh, I've tried garlic before, and we ask, well, is it in Sweet Pro or Redmond? No. And rarely do we have any kind of feedback that it's not effective. And so we definitely appreciate your company and your work on this, and Sweet Pro and Redmond doing what they do on including it as part of their offering, because it is super effective.
Yeah, thank you. I had a conversation with a potential customer today that didn't want to use it at the level we recommended because it had some cost, and I just told them that we weren't interested in working with companies that want to put it on as tag dressing. That if, because I've fought that the whole last 8 or 10 years since I've personally been associated with feeding concentrated garlic products in the market. If you're not going to use an effective dose, then don't bother with it, because it really just makes what we're trying to do that much harder, So I'm glad to be working with you guys and feed manufacturers that want to put it in at a level that's efficacious. So thank you.
Excellent. Ethan, were you able to figure out how to unmute there? All right, any other questions here before we finish up?
Tom, this is Ty Jones. I wanted you to speak a
Hey,
little
Ty.
bit to, if you could speak a little bit to some of the lice control that we've seen with the garlic product. You didn't really touch on that in your slides, but maybe if you could.
Yeah, sure. As far as testimonials go, this is time of year that business kind of winding down, of course, when temperatures are warming up and so forth. But typically, most of the Cydectins and fall deworming products have about 52 days of efficacy. And then when those things start wearing off, we get into, middle of winter, January, where we start really seeing problems with lice in cattle kind of cropping up their heads again. And a lot of cattle rubbing fence posts and missing patches of hair and start looking pretty shoddy. And so probably the easiest thing a feed salesman could do is put some product out there in front of those cattle, and typically in about 2 weeks to 20 days guys will see the problems go away, and they just resolve themselves. So I think it must be the biting lice, the ones that are taking blood meals, that are keeping cattle agitated, of course, and those lice seem to be very susceptible to. You can clean a herd up really quick by just putting product back out for them with garlic in the middle of winter. So that's been a night and day. One of the only things you can actually see happening in front of your eyes is a cattleman with feed products like that. So it's been kind of fun. But yeah,
Tom, I actually last week I was talking to and it's a feed yard not very far from me. They had actually poured them cattle twice, and the lice were coming back again. And so one of the guys took it upon himself to just put some Redmond with garlic in X number of bunks in this feed yard. And 30 days later, they had to pour the rest of the feed yard, but those particular pens, they were haired back over. Their hair looked good. They didn't have to do a thing with them. So
yeah, it's kind of fun when you can.
Second time they've done that.
Yeah, it's kind of fun when you can do some of these things and put them out there and actually see it working. Typically in 25 or 30 days, cattle are starting to grow hair back and starting to look better. So yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, he's a believer, but the guy that runs the feedlot wasn't, so he just went ahead and did it himself. And proved to him it works.
That's my kind of program.
Yeah, 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 and significantly cheaper.
I'm good at begging forgiveness after the fact, I guess. So
Yeah, so am I. You can ask Scott.
Yeah, there you go.
don't ask permission, Dwayne.
No, just do
You
it.
can beg forgiveness. So
Yep.
All right, any other questions while we have Tom on here? Once
well,
again,
thank you guys.
This webinar will be recorded or is recorded and will be uploaded onto our website and onto our YouTube channel. The other webinars that we've had in the series are already up on our website. And so we certainly appreciate you taking the time this evening to be with us. Thanks again, Tom, and hope everybody has a great night and a good week. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you all. You bet.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dwayne.
Take care.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.